Hey everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay, and today I'm so excited and honored to finally have a guest, which has been on my mind for so long. Finally, I have Cynthia Summers, who is an Emmy-winning costume designer who was behind some of our favorite TV series like The Last of Us. We have also Snowpiercer. We have Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events. We have Swan Song starring Mahershala Ali. So this amazing woman is right in front of me right now, virtually speaking. But I'm just so happy and excited to have her here. And Cynthia, I'm just so happy to talk to you.
Yes, hi, thanks for having me. And as I mentioned, just bear with me in my voice. I'm sure it just sounds kind of husky, that's all.
This sounds really, really Diane Keatonish, which I
Yeah,
love, to be honest.
not so bad. Yeah, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so glad we connected.
Yeah, me too. So,
Uh,
what I want to know is now with your impressive resume, I want to go back to the very beginning. How did Cynthia Summers start and what drew her to the world of costume design?
Wow. Well, I think that designing was always a part of me in some way, whether I knew it or not. And that sounds a little lofty to say, but I think now at this stage of my life, and if I reflect back, I think that's true. I started off in musical theater and dance before I became an adult. And often in those genres, you're you have to do your own mending. You have to do, you try to help create parts of your costume, or you have a bigger voice in your costume, or you just are have a knack for it, and so you kind of gravitate towards it, and then people kind of entrust you with that. So it really started out that way for me at the very, very, very beginning. And then as far as film goes, I guess when I was young, when I was about in my early 20s. I started, moving away from dance, primarily because I graduated from actually doing it to teaching, and teaching led into doing costumes. And then there, I went back to fashion design school because I thought, maybe there are things I didn't know or that I could learn that would help me, help to advance, pardon me, where I was at and where I'd like to go, or just make it easier, make what I was doing easier. And while I was at design school, there was a movie that came into town, and they were looking for someone to build tutus for two of their characters that had to have a fight. It was like, and they were kind of very mm, unconventional tutus. They were a little on the dark side, if you will. And I said yes, because I felt like it was the moment to say yes to something that, was going to elevate my game or to be different. And it was a journey. It was awe-inspiring. I was just really taken in by the whole process of filmmaking and costuming for filmmaking, and just the whole process on set and doing fittings. And I was captivated by it. So after I finished that job, um, I finished school, and then I asked around friends that I knew who were in the business if they knew anyone. And a friend of mine put me in touch with a production designer who does the sets and is basically, involved in the actual physical look of the show. And I asked him very nicely if he would consider taking me on for something small he might be doing in the future if that were to happen. And he said yes. Let's stay in touch. And so for a year, I very nicely called him, and I didn't bug him too much, but enough. And then he got an indie called Double Happiness. And I said yes. And it was the most confusing time, but also the most amazing time. I learned so much. And that's pretty much how I began. And then after that, yeah, this one film led to another.
Wonderful. So,
Yeah.
what I hear from a lot of costume designers, and I've been talking to a lot lately, they're
Yeah.
inspired by different things. Some of them are inspired by colors, some fabric, some just the narrative and the character. Some just want to feel the world. So, what inspires Cynthia? What is the first thing that inspires her?
Well, the script, first of all, and what's in the script. And it can be I've done a lot of different genres, and that's on purpose because I want to stay inspired. I don't want to get locked into anything, any one genre. Although I may and other designers may lean into a genre more and have more credits in one sort of genre than another. But I like to do different things because it keeps it interesting for me, and it keeps my creative juices flowing, I guess. It just keeps me wanting to learn more. It also, when you're designing something, regardless of what it is, it's taking place with a group of people or one person in a certain time and place. And whether that's contemporary or it's period or it's fantasy, you have to really get into the character of of the main characters and sort of like build a backstory for them if they don't have them. Who's their mother? Who's their father? Where did they grow up? Where did they come from in the world before they got to where they were? Maybe they didn't come from anywhere else. So all of those things really inform you about, what the characters going to look like today, at this stage of their life, and how they've gotten to this stage of their life and what they're looking like now. So that's what really inspires me at the get-go is, just what's on the page, what's been written, who the character is and who they interact with the rest of the characters, and then basically their story. And then after that, a lot of times when we start a project, we don't have our cast yet. So after you sort of get to know the character on the page in the script, then you'll get the cast member, and it'll either be, oh, that makes total sense, or, oh, what a surprise. I would have never thought of that person for this role, but how great is that? And then you really can get into, like, really get into the look of the character. So that's when I really like to uh, go, if I can, either virtually or physically, go to where the character is living in our story. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, I don't have to physically, if it's a certain part of the world, I don't have to physically go there, but I can go there virtually or go there, um, buy fabrics that inspire that character's what they're wearing. So that, like you were saying, the texture of the fabric, the colors of the fabric, how it will move on that character's body, whether that character would even wear that fabric. Maybe it's not appropriate for what they're wearing, but maybe it's appropriate for what it's in their bedroom, like they're dressing on their bed or at their office. Maybe there's, I don't know, prints around them that exist that don't have to be on their body, but can be influenced on them just by their surroundings. So we have to take all of those things into consideration. And unless it's a story point, you don't want your characters to be blending into the walls. You don't want them to be, the same color as the walls or the same print as the walls, unless it's a story print. And I have done that before as well, which is kind of fun. So I want to say color, time and place, the cast member, and actually, depending also when it is and where it is. If it's futuristic, there's less nature involved, but I really in nature inspires me a lot as well because the colors in nature are so um, they're so unique and true. And I think a lot of our colors start with the true colors of nature, and then we manipulate them and make them into different kinds of blue or different kinds of green or what have you. So I think really what inspires me is what's all around us and what's all around the character. I think that's a good place to start for, yeah.
So when you mention nature, where have you felt like with a certain character that you're really drawn from nature and you felt that the fabric and the clothes, the costumes stood out as something that you could feel like? I remember a certain shade of blue on Jennifer Connelly in Snowpiercer, where I
Yeah.
felt like, oh, this blue is just amazing. So what's that? A moment inspired by nature too, or maybe another character in another setting?
Yeah, well, so that's a great reference. So the colors are also very important to directors and very important to directors of photography, DPs, because they have a picture of the whole picture. I have a picture of the character and their general surroundings and the people that they're with and how the people that they're with dress and how that reflects on them. But a director has in their mind um, the whole picture for the whole movie, generally. And so I really have to lean into that. I have to lean into what their inspiration is for that. So it on a show like Snowpiercer, there is no nature. The only nature is snow. Everything is dead or under snow and ice. So the color of blue was very important because they're in this train. The train colors that her Jennifer Connelly's character lives in is right from the first class all the way to the tail car. And if you know the story, in first class, it's beautiful. It was built for long people to live on the train for a long time, and for people with money. And you go to the middle class, it's exactly what society is in the world, only put on a train. And by the time you get to the tail cars, it's the ghetto. And so um, she needed to be in a color that stood out, but that reflected the blue tone actually was inspired somewhat by the ice and the snow and the metal of the train, and then a color that was also very kind of peacocky and stood out, but which stood out where she stood out when she was in first class, but not in a garish kind of way. She stood out in second class in a still an accessible way, except we knew that she was a boss. And then by the time she gets to the tail car, when she gets to the ghetto, she really stands out. Like she really stands out as like money and power and the poor people. So that color had to travel throughout the train and tell those stories throughout the train. And we dyed our fabric because, sorry, we dyed our fabric because we needed a specific sort of turquoise inspired uh azure kind of blue. Like it really kind of um it kind of blurred the lines of that sort of blue. So that's how we wound up with the blue for that.
Wow.
Yeah. And even something like Esme's character in Lemony Snicket, the colors in that show were very, very important. And specifically, one thing that stands out for me is the octopus dress for lots of reasons, because it was very difficult to build. It was extremely time consuming. It was all latex. The latex came from London, England. We were shooting it in Vancouver, Canada. The color came from the US. Anyways, it was built in Vancouver. But that color of purple was a very specific color of purple that Barry Sonnenfeld wanted for the dress. Um, it didn't have any meaning for me beyond he requested purple and a specific color of grape. And so we did a lot of tests, and somewhat limiting because, when you do fabric samples, the fabric a lot of times dictates how the dye is going to react and what actual color you're actually going to get. It's like painting walls. You've got the color and you see the color chip and you think this is going to look great, and you get it on the wall, and because of the surroundings and the light reflecting on it, it doesn't always appear the same.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. So we had to do that, but we also had to do that with latex and do it country to country. So that was really difficult, but he actually at the end of the day chose that specific purple and was exactly that purple at the end of the day. So that
Wow.
was really fun. Yeah,
The exact purple. Awesome.
the exact
So
purple.
this brings me to a show that I felt was visually very beautiful, Swan Song. And
Mm,
I want to ask you about dressing Glenn Close, because I mean,
yeah.
hello, first of all, I love her. And her character, Dr. Scott, was in very contrast to the Mahershala Ali and Naomi, two characters. So I want to know, like, how would you dress these individual, very standout characters? And at the same time, it's like Glenn Close, she's an icon. So I want to know how the process would go with that.
I've never worked with Glenn before. That was my first time, and I hope I get to work with her again. She's an amazing, amazing human being. And she often actors have they're busy people, and they're often in different parts of the world that you're in. So most of the time we get their information through their management, or we scrounge for it through other productions that they've been on and things like that. So we don't often get to talk to them directly, which is too bad, but it's the way it goes. However, with Glenn, her manager said call her, and I said, oh, okay, I just need her sizes. And then we could talk about her character a little if she's, interested in talking to me about that. And he said, just call her. So I called her and she did pick up. I left a message. And then she called me back and I wasn't near my phone and she left me a message and she was like, "Hi Cynthia, it's Glenn." I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
"Oh my God."
Oh, wow.
So that was my introduction to Glenn, and then we connected, and she's just delightful, and she's so invested. Obviously, she's an amazing award-winning. I mean, she's Glenn Close, but she is an actor who has an invested interest in her costume in every show that she does. And if you know Glenn, you'll know that um, she takes one piece from every show that she's ever been on, and she has a collection that she's kept. And I believe that they're mounting a show somewhere. And that's old news. So they may have done it, or then COVID happened, maybe it didn't, or something like that. So I should look into that and find out if that ever did happen, or if it's a standing show that maybe is around all the time. I don't know. In any case, her character, so she in Swan Song, she represents technology. She represents the future. And Swan Song is a show that's set in the future, but it's not futuristic. But it's a little more advanced than where we are now. There are self-drive cars, um, which is happening now with Tesla, but there are self-drive cars are normal. There's earbuds that people wear. There are lenses that people have in their eyes. So it's quite advanced as far as technology goes, and science. And so she represents that side. And what was really beautiful, I think, about that, and to keep it grounded, is the the facility, the science and the medical facility that she works in is deep in the forest. And when I first read it, I thought that's kind of creepy. It almost reads like, feels like, I don't know, sci-fi or horror or something, like something's going to happen.
Yeah.
But then when you actually get there, you have to get there by water. A lot of it's remote because it needs to be, because it's still underground. It's not a, it's not a, uh,
Official or something.
an
Yeah.
official,
Yeah.
science thing. So we needed to show her in as a scientist, but we didn't want to put her in a lab coat. We didn't want her to be that much, that clinical looking. We wanted it to be when the patients get to the clinic, that they're driving. Sorry, I'm rambling, but they go in the boat, they're on the water, they get to this beautiful forested area, and they sort of you find your way in, like walking in. So it's really, you don't know what you are expecting. So when we get there, we didn't want lab coats on everyone. We didn't want it to feel like, you know
Just a
science.
laboratory. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But we wanted her to feel organic, and we wanted her to feel elegant in a way, and not too sterile. We wanted her, because her dialogue is very clinical. And she delivers it in a really beautiful way, though. She's very caring, but she doesn't get to the sappy side. She was so spot on. It was such a great character. And then Mahershala's look needed to look very grounded. It needed to look like, um, very accessible. And Mahershala is so handsome, and
Very.
he put anything on. And the problem with him is he put something on and he looks so hot. So we needed to, like, pull everything back so that he looked, like he had style, but was this grounded person, and didn't look too, like, I mean, too GQ, because he just totally goes there. You just put something nice on him and all of a sudden he just looks amazing. So
Yeah.
we kind of had to fight that a little bit. Um, but we needed him to look like an everyman looks, it's like really accessible. And it worked. A lot of the fans were like, where did you get that jacket? Where is that puffer coat from? What jeans is, what's the hat? And that's the perfect response, I think, that we were looking for in dressing him and in dressing Naomi, who's also gorgeous. And we were also dressing character. They both came from different parts of the country or different countries, and sort of what they were doing for a living, and their background really needed to be reflected in their costumes. So I think that was the struggle, and the ultimate outcome of, the clinical but beautiful in nature sort of look of Glenn and company, and then Cameron's family and friends living in the real world.
So I could imagine that with this career, there's this moment when you feel like everything just fits. The costume fits on the actor, and you just see the character manifested in front of you, which was an aha moment, one that stood out to you more than the others, or maybe where you felt like everything is serene. This is it. This is what I was looking for. Do you remember a certain moment?
There's so many, but I think there's one that's, I mean, there's one that stands out because it really was a physical and an emotional aha moment. So in Lemony Snicket, um, I did the second and third season of Lemony Snicket, and pr production wanted me to fit um, Neil Patrick Harris for all of Count Olaf's disguises for all of the first season at the beginning of the season with the very first fitting I had with him, which was great because they're really important, obviously. And I hadn't met him. I had to fly to go see him. So we put all these costumes together. We went and saw him, and we had a fitting, and it was great. But that was really kind of at the elementary stage of the costume. So it was really about fit and, color and the fabric and etc. So I didn't have all the accessories and everything. And that was very successful, which is great. Then we packed up and went back to this Vancouver where we made it. And we started getting into actually building these for properly. He came in for his first fitting, and I started with which one did I start with? I can't remember. But when we got to sorry, Count Olaf as Gunther, and in his Karl Lagerfeld nod, he came in, he put it on. He was very quiet. And when an actor comes in, usually the designer, you give your spiel, your sort of pitch to the costume. Well, here it is. Here's the fabric. Here's the illustration. Here's how I see this moving on you, and why I did this and why I did that and why I left this off. And here's some things we can add. Here are some props we can use. He put Gunther's outfit on, and he stood in front of the mirror for a second. I said, "Oh, you need the cane," and he took the cane and he stood there, and he didn't have his hair or prosthetic or hair or makeup on, but he stood there in front of the mirror, and then he just started talking in Gunther's voice. Well, I just think that this is, I think, I'm a very handsome man from Europe. And he just started talking, and then his shoulder, and then he cocked his hip a little bit, and he just stood there. And then he went for a stroll around the room, and he came back to the three-way mirror, and he stood in the front there, just sort of like, you could see, him embodying the character growing in him, the facade. It just sort of happened, and it was just like, I get goosebumps just talking about it. That was one of those amazing moments as a designer where it comes together in every kind of way in that moment. And I had time before he actually had to wear it. So he had time to like tweak it and perfect it, so it was just really beautiful. It was really, I think for both Neil and I, was a moment where we really connected on, yeah, this is going to work. This season's going to work out just fine. So
Wow.
yeah, that was great. That was really awesome.
So I cannot talk to you and not mention how a gigantic task The Last of Us must have been, because you have an established fan base, you have a game, you have everything, you have a world. So how do you take a task like this? Do you break it into character? Do you break the worlds? Do you break it into like the rebuilds or the safe place or whatever? How do you handle it?
Yeah, it's when they first asked me about doing The Last of Us, I wasn't sure for a couple of reasons. One, exactly what you're talking about. You have to be so careful when you're actualizing a game, when you're, creating a live action version of a game, because games come with a built-in audience of fans, and they're fans because they're more than just movie fans. They're invested in the games. They're characters in the games, depending what game you're playing. They have personifications in the game. They're really invested in the game. So it's really um, you have to be so careful that you have to honor that. And so you need to know that what production's take is going to be on this. Are they going to be paying close attention to the game? Are they going to just have a few nods to the game and sort of make it into something else? And so that's important. But also, for me, it's a jean for as a costume designer, it's a jeans and t-shirt show, basically. And so, you have to question, well, what's in it for me? It's sci-fi and there are the clickers and the infected, and that's amazing. Um, but what's in it for me in that kind of way? So, I really had to think about it. I spoke to Craig Mazin at length about it. And, he just said, you got to think about this as a love story. It's a love story. And I was like, really? Aren't we just running from a pandemic? Isn't it like he said, no, it's a love story. You've got to watch this. You've got to watch that. You've got to do this of the game, blah, blah, blah. So I really did my homework. Took a deep dive. And the thing that sold me on it was some footage I saw of a clicker in the game. And the clicker was in a corner. And, they can only move by echolocation. They're blind and deaf and everything else. So they can only move by echolocation. So, knowing that this used to be a person, a human, a person with, a life, and now they've become this part of nature because that's what's happened. They are a part of nature and they're only trying to survive in nature. And to see this clicker stuck in a corner, not being able to get out, knowing no one's going to help it, and like, what is its fate going to be? It broke my heart. It just broke my heart. I just thought, well, I need to know more about this. I need to be involved with this. There's humanity behind this terrible thing that's happening, and these people that are being infected and become nature, basically. They become nature. So that's what drew me in. And I decided to go with it. Sorry, there's some parts of there definitely were parts of the game, looks of the game, especially for Joel and Ellie, that we really, really wanted to honor. We had to honor. And then when you see a lot of the characters that come into their sphere as they go through the story, some of those we also, really, really had to honor. So we paid close attention to recreating things that were really important. But because we're able to tell a broader story now, in a series than you are in a game, we had to give more backstory to Ellie and Joel, which we were able to show. So we needed more costumes. So those costumes were built in the same flavor, but taking into consideration that, they're on the run, they're traversing the country. So they are gathering found pieces on the way. But we wanted to stay close to their personality. We wanted to make sure that whatever we added to the game look still spoke to the personality of the characters. That's what was really important. And then when we were doing the crowd scenes, wherever we were with the crowd scenes, we also wanted to make sure that we were showing different parts of the country. And even though people have traveled to the quarantine zones, you can show that you could show that in the background performers' looks, but we also needed to know we were in Boston. We needed to know we were in Jackson, Wyoming. We needed to know we were in Lincoln, upstate. We just needed to know the areas of the world we were in. So that's where we got to. That was really intricate, to be honest with you. Each place we went had a different color palette and a different tone of dirt or breakdown. So when we were in Boston in the QZ, people had more accessibility to electricity, so people could wash their clothes. The water might not be so clean, so their clothes aren't going to be stark white, but people could wash their clothes. They could eat properly. They could, so people were a little more, they weren't so skinny. They had more character because they could show fashion, even if it was found fashion. Whereas when we got to Wyoming, we were in the winter, so there was snow everywhere. So that was a factor. But we also wanted to show, even though in Wyoming, they had an electric dam that they rejigged. They had all of these, they also had power and electricity, and it was a town they built, but it was very Western. The lighting was a lot more stark there. And you still have to have breakdown and aging and dying over top of everything, because everything is old. So everything, even if it's not got holes in it, needs to look like it's faded over time, or it's gotten a little bit dull from being washed in not pristine water over the years, kind of thing. So, sorry. So a lot of those factors came into place, and I don't even know if I answered your question because I kind of
Definitely.
rambled.
Definitely. I mean, this whole answer was just amazing. It was fitting. It made me feel the weight of the project and at the same time
Yeah,
how creativity plays into it. So I'm just so
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, it was really huge. And I guess just to round back on the jeans and t-shirts thing, I want to say that it was such an involved, all-encompassing, every department had to work much more closely together than anything else, even Lemony Snicket or Altered Carbon or Snowpiercer, um, than I've ever done before. All of the departments, costumes and set deck and makeup effects and props, we were basically all one department, which was unique, but also really interesting because, the costumes almost had to be mm, not something you notice. So they had to be a part of the character, but also a part of the scenery, and but still be important and still be, a part of the conversation that you're looking at. And so that was very fulfilling for me because I mean that always happens. You want that on some level, but it was very important in this on this show because people were living with so much less. And yeah, it was really very gratifying at the end of the day. A jeans and t-shirt show. Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah, who knew? Awesome. One of the things that really interests me about your description of things is how to you The Last of Us is a jeans and t-shirt show. And at other shows, you have this giant cyberpunkish feels to it. And I feel like you've been in many post-apocalyptic
Yeah.
sci-fi shows. So what draws you more? Like, what makes you feel more excited? Like, just this show that seems like a challenge, or though it's very low key, or something that is major in terms of the color palette and the characters and all the things that we mentioned.
I think a lot of it is just the project when it first comes your way, or if you seek it out even. Um, what is the project? Uh, and I think, I mean, doing larger shows like these giant post-apocalyptic shows or futuristic shows is something that I think you actually have to work up to because they're very difficult. It's a lot. You have a large crew. There's a lot of building and constructing costumes. There's just a lot to do. I'd certainly, I mean, you could never say never, but I'm glad I had the experience before me that I did before I got into such large productions. But that being said, um, doing something smaller is also it's what it is. So if something's smaller but it's beautiful, or if it's a story that really touches me, um, or if it's the right time for something small and I just want to have a little break from doing these large projects, so it's a lot of factors. And I think again, it's what it is. Does this appeal to me now? You just feel these things. I mean, some of us like to be working all the time. I certainly do work a lot. Um, I try to dial that back a little bit, but I don't know. Some people, I don't know. Some of us just like to work and create. So this is my outlet and also my, what I do for a living. So um, yeah, so I think it's what comes to you at the right time. Was that, if when you get to the point where you're looking at multiple things at one time, that's when it gets difficult, especially when you have kind of got a passion for several of the things you're looking at. But then again, maybe it's not the right time to do something huge, or maybe it's not the right time to do something small. So, and then there's travel as well. Like a lot of things are, we shoot all over the world these days. So yeah, a lot of that factors in, definitely. Yeah.
So for a movie like Beautiful Boy, this is a very grounded movie, and at the same time, there is a difficult subject matter, but it feels like it's an everyday movie. And I heard before that it's so hard to do the average person and let them stand out. Like it's so hard to dress a person like you and me, someone, a mother, a father, a son. This is something that I think what I heard is it requires more work. So what I know is how did you approach this project?
Yeah. Beautiful Boys, the director, Sean Koo, is also the writer and a friend of mine. And he actually based it on, I mean, how old is that movie now? 10 years old or more, maybe?
2010, yeah.
Yeah. It was based on oh my gosh, I hope I get this right, the Virginia Tech massacre, I think. And his older sister, I believe, was going to the school then when it happened, or was it happened during her time in school. And sadly, it's so terrible that he made that movie, okay, 13 years ago, and now it's the norm in
Yeah.
America. It's awful. It's just awful. And watching it, I have the trailer of it on as a part of my webpage because I love it. And every time I watch the part where the mother is saying, you should be defend your he's I don't want to ruin it for anyone if you haven't seen it, but the boy who is the shooter of this really average American family, um, and he's the actual shooter, and he dies. He dies during this. The parents are just distraught, and the mother says to her husband, you should be defending him, and he yells back at her, there's no defense for what he's done. So the
Heartbreaking and
that
wonderful.
dynamic of a family torn apart by a child who is torn apart, or led astray, or gone down a unfortunate dark path for whatever reason. But yes, so it's super important to show these people as everyday people. Like, it could be your family, it could be my family, it could be, anybody on the streets family. So you have to really ground, and again, it's the actors that you get, two amazing actors. Um, you need to ground their look so they look like it could be happening to anyone. And I think the tone for that movie as well was, it was is a little bit granular. It was very a little bit old school looking in a way, but the whole movie was made for that purpose, to show that this could happen to you. This could happen in your family. It's a terrible subject. I mean, it's really awful, but it's just everyday occurrence now. Yeah, it's still a really touching movie for me. Yeah.
Definitely. It's a great movie, and I recommend it because I watched it to prepare for you, and I felt so
Yeah.
invested in the story. So I recommend it to everyone, really. It's a great movie. It's a tough subject matter, but it's a great movie. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, well, now that I see you're a movie buff, you've watched Dr. Zhivago, you love it so much, and I love it too. So, which other theatricals or, like these magnificent old movies do you
Oh
feel
yeah.
inspiration from on your jobs, on your daily basis?
Well, here's the thing. I think if I look back, like that far back, into what inspired me as a young person, Dr. Zhivago on a big scale is just that, it's like Lawrence of Arabia. It's just like the big, huge vista movies, the real costumey, but real lots of story. And also that there's stories about other parts of the world that I didn't know either, which was really intriguing to me. I love learning people and cultures, and I just love all of that. And then it's really interesting because something else that was really interesting to me as a young person, and still is Star Trek. Like, I just loved the original Star Trek TV series. i
Wow.
just I was enamored with it. I love sorry, I love the humor. I loved the campy costumes. I loved the color. I love that they were in space. Weird. I love that they talked on these flip phones. That, of course, now we've surpassed that even. I was really involved, and the movie Frida, the story of Frida Kahlo. I mean, I still, to this day, I it's one of the biggest inspirations for me, because I think it embodies culture and color and drama and a real person who really lived, or people who really lived. So you're getting history with it, which is just really fascinating to me. Um, it's like being dropped into a historical person's lifetime. I love it. I loved everything about that movie, the music, the set deck, the colors, the costumes. I mean, the cast, everything about that just still gets me really excited. And I hope one day a Frida Kahlo type movie comes my way. I feel like I haven't done that yet. I feel like I've done series, that were pretty colorful and interesting, but yeah. And I don't know who that historic person would be at this point. Yeah, I don't know who that would be. I'd have to think on that.
Can't wait to watch that. Really, I hope I will watch it someday and we would talk about it.
Yes,
Cynthia,
definitely,
you're
definitely.
just amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me. You filled my night with color. It's now night, so thank you for filling my night with color. Seriously.
Great. That's awesome. A pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, we should catch up and maybe do it again when I have a full voice.
Definitely we'll do it again. Definitely. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.